Okay, if you live in Australia, you absolutely know this feeling. That dream of owning a home, it just seems to be drifting further and further away. It's a national obsession, and let's be honest, it's a national crisis. So let's just dive right into this, because the sheer scale of the Australian property market, it's just mind-boggling. Take a look at this number, $11.4 trillion. That is the total value of all residential real estate in Australia. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's 4 times the country's entire GDP. It is an absolutely immense concentration of wealth. But the real question is, are these insane prices just an unfortunate accident, or is it something else?
Now, here's a pretty provocative claim from one of the country's top demographers. The argument is that this housing crisis isn't just, a simple case of supply and demand gone wrong. No, it suggests that the system is working exactly as it was intended to. So let's follow the evidence. Let's see if we can figure out if Australia's housing market was actually built to be this expensive.
Right, to understand this design, you really just have to follow the money. And it turns out, the government has some incredibly powerful financial incentives to keep prices high. For them, a brand new home is basically a tax revenue goldmine. I mean, just look at the difference here. It's staggering. When a new home gets built, the government can rake in around $270,000 in all sorts of taxes. But when an existing home gets sold, they mostly just get the stamp duty. You can see how this creates this massive incentive for them to favor building expensive new homes over just selling the ones we already have. So that's the logical question, isn't it? If the problem is a lack of supply, just release more land and let developers go nuts. But, well, this is where the system's design gets even clearer. The pipeline for any new supply is just incredibly, painfully slow. 15 years. Get this. That's how long it can take to get a major new subdivision approved and actually developed in Australia. Just think about that for a second. By the time a new block of land is ready to build on, a child born today would be starting high school. This is not a market that's responding quickly to demand. This is a system that is just completely choked by red tape. And if you want to know how bad the shortage is, it all comes down to this. Right now, across the entire country, there's only about 13 weeks worth of titled, ready-to-build land available. Just 13 weeks. That is a razor-thin buffer in a market where demand is just relentless. All right, let's move on to the next piece of this puzzle, because it gets even more interesting. It's not just about how much land is available, it's also about what we're even allowed to build on it. For pretty much half a century, regulations have forced us into this surprising lack of housing diversity. And a key tool they've used for this is something called a covenant. Now, it's a legal rule that's literally written into the deed of the land, and it's something most people have never even heard of. Basically, it dictates the exact type and size of house you have to build, and these rules can last for 50 years or even more. And get this, for the last 50 years, on something like 90% of new housing estates, the covenants have all looked exactly like this. It has to be a 4-bedroom home, minimum 180 square meters, usually made of brick, and it must have a 2-car garage. We've effectively banned smaller, more affordable, and just different types of housing from being built at any kind of scale. This quote really just nails the cultural mindset that's grown out of all this. A house isn't just shelter anymore. It's become a financial tool. We've been taught to use the equity in our expensive homes to borrow more money and fund a lifestyle, treating property less like a home and more like a poker chip in a really high-stakes game. So with affordability at absolute crisis levels, the government has come up with a new solution to help first-home buyers. But the big question is, will it actually fix the problem, or is it just going to pour a whole lot of gasoline on the fire? Okay, so this is the new 5% deposit scheme. It's set to start in October 2025. It's going to let first-home buyers get into the market with a much smaller deposit. And the government guarantees the rest, so you don't have to pay that expensive mortgage insurance. But look at these price caps, $1.5 million in Sydney. The whole point is to get more people buying. But here is the massive fundamental flaw. The scheme could suddenly qualify up to 69,000 new buyers. Now, remember that number from earlier? There are only about 13,000 blocks of titled land ready to go, nationwide. You're basically injecting a tidal wave of new demand into a market that is fundamentally starved of supply. And the result is, well, it's completely predictable. It's the exact same economics as the toilet paper crisis during COVID. Remember that? When everyone rushes to buy something that's in short supply, the price just goes through the roof.
This scheme, as well-intentioned as it might be, is probably going to make housing even less affordable for everyone.
So, if just flooding the market with more buyers isn't the answer, what is? Well, a lot of experts are arguing we need to fundamentally rethink what a home even is. And the solution might lie in one simple word: diversity. Now, this is a model that's really being pushed by housing futurists. A rooming house is not what you think. It's not a traditional share house. Instead, I want you to imagine a single home that's been cleverly designed to hold several small, private, and totally self-contained studio apartments, each one with its own little kitchen and bathroom. And here's where it becomes a realistic path to actually owning a home. A first home buyer could purchase one of these properties, live comfortably in their own private micro apartment, and then rent out the other 4 units. The income from those tenants could cover most, if not all, of the mortgage. It's a total game changer. And here's the really incredible part: the price point. By thinking about ownership just a little bit differently, where you might own 1/5 of the whole property, a first home buyer could get their own 30 square meter micro apartment for as little as $220,000. That's an affordable way-in that just does not exist in the market today. So, it really leaves us with this one final thought. For decades, the Australian dream has been tied to this idea of a big house on a big block of land. But maybe, just maybe, the path to fixing our housing crisis and restoring that dream for a whole new generation isn't about building bigger, but about finally starting to build smarter.